Hi guys, I'm Daniel and this is Dan's Tech World. So in today's video we are looking at these guys. Now these are some of my Canon cameras, you can kind of just see them in the background chilling here. But today's video is basically on why I use Canon cameras, and for the longest time I have used Canon cameras. In fact, we're shooting on a Canon camera, so why do I stick with Canon? Well, there's a couple of reasons, to be honest. One, which is the major factor for me, is colour science. These things look awesome. Their colours are awesome, their video quality is awesome, they just look nice, no matter how old the camera is. And it's something that's always worked well with Canon, and they've always got it right. And the second thing is autofocus. Now, autofocus is something that I rely heavily on as someone who's a one-man band, sort of doing everything by themselves sort of thing. So that's why I sort of live by autofocus. And in fact, we're using autofocus right now, so that sort of gives you an idea. When there's just one person, unfortunately, you don't always have the means to be able to be manual focusing. Now, don't get me wrong, I have manual focus lenses. I do manual focus occasionally, and if I'm doing live streams and stuff, sometimes I will set cameras to manual focus only. But 99% of the time, I'm relying on autofocus just because of my workflow and how I work, and because I'm a single op user kind of thing. And the reason I've sat these two cameras here today, which are my Canon XF100 and my Canon XF300, are because, well, these guys still do it pretty right. And I'll be honest, these two cameras, that one was made in 2011 and this one was made in 2010. And they still hold up pretty well. Now, don't get me wrong, there's no 4K, there's no any fancy features like that. But their autofocus and their ability to just run and gun is excellent. Now, what do I mean by their run and gun nature? Well, the thing is, they just work. That's the basis of it. I can pick these up, I can, you know, throw a card in the back of them, throw a battery in the back, that's it, call it a day. I mean, yeah, obviously I'll probably throw a mic on the top of them, but that's not a problem because, well, these guys, believe it or not, have XLR on them. So straight away, they're dead easy. They make life just so much simpler. And for me, that run and gun aspect is probably the best bit about them. Now, the XF300 is a little bit higher end of a camera, don't get me wrong, it's also massive. I mean, look at it, the size of me, it's like almost cinema sized. Now, this is a broadcast style camera, and that's what it was mainly used for. It was mainly used for documentary stuff, run and gun, sort of camera ups for on the go stuff, so television and stuff like that. Liked using these. In fact, you can sort of see its nature just by the fact of when you know, throw it over the shoulder like so. It definitely has that look going for it. But, you know, like I say, so this camera was made in 2010 and it still holds up really well. Its autofocus is pretty solid, especially for the time. You know, we're talking over a decade ago, and the autofocus still holds up excellent. Also, because it's a fixed lens camera, which both of these are, they are camcorder style, the zoom is outrageous, absolutely outrageous. It's ridiculously high, it's ridiculously far, and the 300 also has the equivalent of an L series lens. In fact, it is labelled as an L series lens. It's L series glass on the front of this thing, which is another reason why it weighs an absolute ton. But for me, these cameras just work. I mean, they've got everything that you need ready to go. For instance, both of these have ND filters. This one, you know, the XF300 has built-in slot-in filters on the inside, so no threading anything on the front. I've just got a hood on it and that's about it. And this is kind of how I run both the cameras pretty much all the time. Like I say, they both have XLR ports, which is great. They both have battery sleds, which take massive batteries that you can get hours out of. They both have DC input, like power-wise, so you can just power them straight off the wall or straight off like a DC power bank, which is excellent for on the go and on the run. They're just awesome cameras. You know, you've got viewfinder. Both of these have LCDs. I mean, the 300 has a slightly bigger LCD just because of the nature of the thing. You know, they've got awesome playback controls. They've both got HDMI out. And for me, the thing is, I often use these guys as webcams. Now that might sound daunting and weird, but I use little capture cards that honestly do their job perfectly fine. Now bearing in mind most of the time I'm dealing with just 1080p, which is what these can shoot anyway. But these little capture cards allow me to take the HDMI out of these completely clean fed signal, because of course camcorder, and allow me to put it straight into a computer as a webcam. I can use these to go on Zoom, to go on Facebook Messenger video, to use as OBS cameras, pretty much anything. And that's the perk of them. They're so versatile to this day. And no, they're not cheap cameras by any spec. You know, a XF300 will still go between 11 and £1,500 depending on its condition. I mean, mine's still boxed. I've got the box up in the loft. The XF100 right here, these little guys still go for like 700 quid. I mean, this is a awesome little camera. I mean, just its size, again, XLR, super easy, battery on the back. This thing is lightweight, you know, it works, it's great, you know, it's small, it's lightweight, it's camcorder shaped, it's not much bigger, but with that zoom, I mean, this has got 10 times optical zoom, that's got 18 times, so they're awesome, you know, screen on the side, viewfinder, everything professionals kind of need. And these record at 50 megabit, which is 50 megabit 422 8-bit, I should remind you. So these guys are actually broadcast ready. Like, that was the point of them. These guys record television broadcast 1080. So they record 1080p 30, 1080p 25 actually, because these are the PAL models, but 1080p 25 or 1080 50i, so interlace, which is what pretty much all television broadcast is now, is 1080i, and still the standard definition for that matter. But these guys are so versatile, and considering their age, they do absolute wonders. I mean, I honestly couldn't live with these cameras. Don't get me wrong, I'm upgrading soon, so these will be on their way to someone else, which I will miss having them, but at the same time they have served their purpose highly for me, and I absolutely love them to bits. They are so cool. They've got so many features, you know, independent mic levels, dual slot recording on both, great glass on the front, you know, everything you would need. I mean, just to give you a clue of how many features these guys have, they both have SD cards in them to save their settings, because genuinely there is so many settings in these cameras that they need an SD card to store them. There just wouldn't be enough storage on board. And also, for redundancy, if you drop one of these in a lake and accidentally broke a camera, you can just pull the SD card out, stick it in your camera, or your settings are back, and that's absolutely wonderful for this kind of workflow. Bad points. Well, the 300, heavy as all balls. Genuinely a really heavy camera. Holding this up for any period of time, like, it has a strap on the side, but how anyone would hold this, like, there really isn't a nice way unless you do that and then you're doing that, and it's kind of awkward on your hand. You can't handhold it like this for a while unless you're like beastly. Shoulder rigging is just about the only sensible option for this guy, and yeah, it's got optical image stabilization as well, but it's still a very heavy camera, and holding it up here for a long period of time, trying to zoom and focus and stuff, it gets jarring on your back. And that's the thing, they're 1080p, which is great, but you need a solid tripod as well. That's another factor. I mean, I've got some big beastie tripods. The plate on this guy, you can see, is screwed in with like God knows how many screws, and it is solid as a rock. The XF100 here, again, it's sort of a bit big. You know, it's more dealable. You use, you know, camcorder sized rather than production camera sized. But it's just, this is probably my favourite, just because of its size, because it has most of the features that the 300 does, just in a smaller package. Now you only get one control ring, which means it can either only do zoom, focus, or iris. It can't do all three, whilst the 300 has 3 separate control rings for zoom, iris, and focus. So you do get a bit more flexibility, but just as something that's small, lightweight, run about with, plug a mic into it, whether or not you want to plug something like a lapel, like I'm wearing like right now, or a handheld mic. I mean, these both have phantom power as well, so you can feed like full-on like recording grade mics into them, and they just don't care. I mean, I've taken signals from sound desks and stuff straight in over XLR from these, so I get a clean feed from mixing desks, which I've done for weddings and stuff like that. So for me, they're great cameras. The 300, bit heavy, but also has a few extra features that are just that little bit nicer, especially for a 1080p workflow. And then the 100 is just tiny. Now, I've also got to talk about all the cameras that I own. I own a Canon EOS R, an M50, and an RP. And right now we're filming on the RP because it was the camera with the battery that was charged the most. And this camera is great for the simple fact that it records 4K, it records high bitrate 1080p, its color science is awesome, its autofocus with dual pixel autofocus is just next level. You know, we've got L series glass on the front of it, so it looks really nice and crisp. And overall, the quality is just excellent. Right now, I've got a Sennheiser lapel kit on the top of it, and it's working perfectly, and it's doing exactly what it needs to do as a job. And, you know, flip out monitor so you can vlog with it. This camera is just great for what I use. I use it more as a photography camera than I used to. I used to use it a lot for doing video stuff, but when I got these, then they just took over the job that the RP and the R did. Mostly due to the fact of no record limit, which Canon, please, for all of our sakes, get rid of your 29-minute, 59-second record limit, because it drives us nuts. Sony don't have to deal with that, so why do we? But yeah, no record limit on these guys. So you can just roll and roll and roll and roll it. And because these are dual slot cards, like you can just put in 2 cards and do relay recording, and you can just put a card in, take one out, and vice versa. So if you've got enough batteries, or you're on power or whatever, you can just keep going and keep going and keep going until your arm's tired or you fall asleep. So for me, that's excellent. But yeah, color science and autofocus, things that Canon just got right. And at the end of the day, no, they're not the highest of quality in terms of what you can get out of them with raw recording and things like that, but they've started to take that on board. You know, the Canon EOS R5, for instance, shoots 8K video. Yeah, it overheats a bit, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, you're shooting 8K video in a mirrorless camera. There's going to be limitations. So for the people complaining at that, there really isn't a point complaining. At the end of the day, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the camera to do. You know, for instance, the C70, that's a gorgeous, gorgeous cinema camera, especially in its package. And the RS5C, the R5C, sorry, which is the R5 Cinema, which is just basically a beefed up R5 with a big fan on the back. And honestly, looks like a great camera. That's only a recent release as well. But for me, Canon are very similar to Apple in the fact that they're not the first to market to do things in terms of 4K in their cameras or 120 frames per second video. However, when they implement something, they do it right. They get it right the first time. So, autofocus. They were one of the first people to do decent autofocus in bridge cameras, mirrorless cameras, DSLRs in the early days of, like, for you Americans, the T2i. And that was the main thing, you know. Canon were known for autofocus, and they still are. You know, this is world-class autofocus in terms of how quick it is and how responsive, but how natural it looks at the same time, and that's the awesome bit. So for me, Canon cameras are just the right way to go. I love their color science, I love their quality. It doesn't need to be the highest resolution to be the best quality. At the end of the day, if you're pixel peeping, that's just for a review, that's just to look at it. But in day-to-day tasks where you're just looking at the video, they stand the test of time. I've recorded weddings and stuff on these 2 cameras that are over 10 years old. And you know what? People still look at them and go, oh my God, the quality of that's gorgeous. And I tell them the age and they are super surprised. These cameras just stand the test of time. And I think a lot of Canon's cameras will stand the test of time just because of how good they look out of box. And for me, that's what's important. These cameras need to last. You know, it's great being a YouTuber that can go and get a new camera every 5 minutes the second it releases. But for me, for someone who's actually using it day in, day out for a number of years, then these need to hold up. They're big investments for average people. And especially someone like me who I'll be honest, has to deal with a bit of a budget sometimes. So honestly, I love them. And I want to hear in the comments about what cameras you use. Do you use Nikon? Do you use Sony? Do you use Canon yourself? If you do, what do you like about each one? What do you like about Sony cameras? Is it the high resolution or the log files? What do you like about Canon? Is it the colour science like me and the autofocus, or the glass? In fact, that's another main selling factor. Canon L series lenses, they just kick butt in the industry, and they're still used, and they're used on cinema cameras. So you know, at the end of the day, there are cinema cameras that have PL mount and EF mount. That's how known the Canon line is. But anyway, let me know. This is only a short video just to fill you guys in on why I use these guys and why I absolutely adore them. But anyway, I hope you liked the video. If you did like it, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, then that button also exists. But if you did like the video, then please tell me down in the comment section below. Also, if you have any comments, questions, ideas, anything that you want to see on the channel next, anything you want to hear about, if you want to know anything about these and about what else I use, then of course please ask. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. I've been Daniel, and this has been Dan's Tech World. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. You bring me comfort to my soul.